Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Jordan's. Now, this book will be known to many people because it's one of a series of books from APIL, that's the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers. It's always a pleasure to review any of their books because they're very much to the point. They're very much what we need as practitioners, and they're easy to read for you if you are a lay person or a litigated person today who cannot afford legal advice and needs to get some idea of where you might be in a personal injury matter. Now, this particular book that I'm looking at is now a second edition of what is one of the APIL guides, and it's the APIL Guide to Tripping and Slipping Cases. A very important area of law. It's an area of practice that I'm quite heavily involved in. Get a lot of opinions that I have to produce looking at the merits of a particular case, and I do quite a lot of court work as well, much of which I hasten to add eventually does get settled. The book that has actually been written by Charles Foster and Ben Bradley, and it's actually effectively a case book. As I say, it's been produced by Jordan's. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I have written this review, and we talked about the book. It's here, we'll have a look at it in a minute. And we've given it the title for our review, should be on the web and in the journals, for personal injury practitioners, APIL'S definitive text on slipping and tripping cases, now in a new second edition. Let's look at the book first. It's a paperback. There we go. It's not very long, big, not very heavy. There's the front. You can see the actual spine there, and then you see at the back they've got some basic information about what's in the book, most of which you'd be expecting to find anyway. It runs to 300 pages, just over. The index is not as long as is the case with some books. This is of course available as an e-book. Most of these books now are. If we go to the front of the book, you can see the first page here. Gives you an idea of what we've got. The two writers, of course, are both barristers. There's a useful preface from them, which is always worth reading to get a feel for what this is all about. And then there's always a note about APIL, an important organisation if you're a PI lawyer, and they do a lot of very good work. And I'm going to give them a plug, and there's the address if you want to join. Now, the contents you can see are quite detailed, and they actually make up for the fact that the index itself at the back is pretty small. You see there's paragraph numbering, there's page numbering, but there's also paragraph numbering. I'll come on to that in a minute. You can see these stuff. It talks about things like preparing the case. Then we get on right at the end to a whole series of appendices. The first appendix is on precedents. There is no CD for this, by the way, but there are some precedents which are set out, and all the very basic information you need is there. And bearing in mind there's the protocol now, you've got to bear that in mind all the way through. Now you've got Appendix B, which is case summaries, Appendix C on risk assessment, then D, civil procedure rules, guidelines, and then safety at street works, photographs. Always an important one, photographs. You'll be amazed how people forget about the photographs, and when you get to court the first question is, I say, where are the photographs? Have we actually put them in evidence? No, you've got problems, so do bear that in mind. And then addresses at the back and various other bits and pieces. There's codes of practice and so on. Now the table of cases is very important as well, quite a few of them. And then after that there of course are some statutes and statutory instruments to be expected. Then we get into the body of the text itself. Selecting the defendant, always again an important one, especially if they're hiding their identities, which they do. You've got a paragraph numbering system there, and then of course there are basically no real footnotes in this at all. It's all actually contained in the body copy of the text, but you do have all the detail concerning the cases and the case references should you need to look them up in a law report itself. And if we just go to the back of the book again, you can see some of the appendices. Let's just find one here. Safety at street works and road works. It's an extract of the code of practice. Again, that's specifically for perhaps a tripping matter. I think it's a very good book. You do have things, for instance, you do have some very hands-on information about stuff such as the type of content of what you might want in your particulars of claim. But you've got an awful lot of case law which gives you some idea of what you can and can't do. I think chapter 10 is very important, preparing a case, because one of the problems today is the government have intervened through the Ministry of Justice in a number of areas, and one of the big ones is the business about how you actually the practice direction for pre-action conduct, which is very important because it does go to costs at the end. So you've got to be aware that you must have behaved in terms of your conduct within the protocol and the practice directions before you even start. And I think a lot of clients I've been seeing recently haven't appreciated that that's quite an important thing to consider before you even embark on any litigation. Now, having said all of that, what's this book about? Well, we say this: personal injury lawyers will welcome this new second edition of what has become a highly regarded work of reference. It's been published by Jordan's in association with APIL, the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers, and it's co-authored by two highly experienced barristers, and this has become the definitive reference, God, I don't think they'd like that, to best practice in what's a difficult area of law. And it's controversial, of course, as well. So whether you as a practitioner acting for a claimant or a defendant, I think you will find this work of particular help. The reason being that there has to be full disclosure. You have to know exactly what you're doing so that you've got some idea of the weight of the evidence you've got and the merits of which the case actually deserve attention. So clearly you've got to make sure you've got a proper case, putting it in its nicest way. So it's a one-stop text, basically. It's presented in this handy paperback format, and it covers, as the publishers point out, all the legal aspects involved in a tripping or slipping case, including local government, landlord and tenant, occupiers' liability, health and safety at work, and highways and so forth. And in particular, claims involving highways, as the authors explain, are often complex, and they're nuanced, fraught with technical argument, uncertainties and grey areas, which is why any number of personal injury practitioners rely on this type of guide, and of course there are a whole series of them, for their practice and basically how to do the job. And it's important, I think, also to note especially the chapter on preparing a case, which is chapter 10, which is what I stress, because I think that's where we are in 2016 with the way that we go about our litigation. So I do think when you're advising clients, that's something they could read. It's not an expensive book, so it's something they could actually purchase if they feel strongly about the case they might be embarking upon. Interestingly, not too much has actually changed since the first edition, and that's what the authors say anyway. That's obviously in matters of slipping and tripping. Since the previous edition, that was the first edition, appeared in 2010. Nevertheless, the new developments that have taken place are significant and are incorporated in the current edition. And I think part of that goes to practice to a certain extent, and I'm sure you as professionals will understand that. And to cite only a few examples, there have been substantial changes pertaining to the tort of nuisance in respect of recent cases. Numerous other updates include an update on the workplace accidents issues following the introduction of the Enterprise and Regulatory Reform Act 2013, another piece of controversial legislation. But again, as you know, with any of these slipping and tripping cases, you've got to be pretty up to date with what is going on. It's logically structured as a book for ease of use throughout. I've always found them very easy. Certainly Jordan's have always aimed to give us the best possible service, and we certainly get that. And the book features numbered paragraphs, as I've shown you, throughout, with an extensive table of contents and an index, as well as tables of cases, statutes and statutory instruments. And what I found especially useful, and I'm sure practitioners will agree if they're under pressure, are the appendices at the back. That's from A to J, which take up about 1/3 of the book. And these include things like the case summaries, which I've indicated, the checklists, the relevant civil procedurals, CPR, letters, health and safety executive risk assessment materials, again very important, and guidelines, and a lot more in addition towards the end of the actual list of appendices. Now, whether you're an experienced or inexperienced lawyer with a busy personal injury practice, you no doubt will consider this as an indispensable guide and therefore an essential purchase. And I think it should be, and certainly you should have looked at it and read it to get some idea of where we are at the moment with the law and where with the practice of dealing with these cases, so you've got some idea when you're advising the client. And in this day and age, the likelihood is that you could well be finding that the other side, if you're in court, will not be represented. And therefore the onus will fall on you to try to indicate to them where they might find some information which will assist them, without doing the work for them, at least assist them to know how far they can go. That's only a tip, but we have to be realists in a modern era where legal aid has gone and we are facing a massive number of unrepresented parties. And as revealed finally, if I may say this, by the two authors, the aim since the earliest edition has been to help hard-pressed practitioners knock off earlier than they otherwise would. Well, that's an interesting observation, but the fact of the matter is that it does actually help you immensely with your time management. The law in this book, they add right at the end, is up to date to September 2015. And as I say, it's a good book. You gather I'm an expert supporter of APIL and all of these guides. There it is again. You can see the spine and the back of it. And then if we open it up, as I said, I started with chapter 10, which was preparing the case. Then you get, quite quickly, you get to the appendices, because after that you're into the actual, after the preparation of the case, you're straight into precedents. You can see the actual, this is the appendices, but you can see it's actually basically half the book, because it's got the cases, it's got the precedents, and it's got all the other things that you need to know. For instance, the questionnaire and all the other stuff right at the beginning. Now, it's as though I assume you know all of this, but how to go about these matters. But for someone looking at this recording, what I'm trying to do is to show you that there's a lot of information you can get, which will, and if you obviously are able to understand and read the book, and they are readable books, these, you should be able to produce your case very well, very quickly. Good luck anyway with what you're doing, and a big thank you to Jordan's and of course APIL, and notwithstanding to Charles Foster and Ben Bradley for the work they've done in making our lives a lot easier. Thank you to all anyway. Bye bye.